Hi, and welcome to Top Dice. I'm Ade, and we've got Chris with us as usual. So
Hi
say hi,
guys.
Chris. Right. And today we're going to be talking about old versus new. This is game systems. Now, this has come up because of a post that I stuck up on the UK tabletop role-playing Facebook group, and it was all about Arkham Horror role-playing game, and just asked for opinions. So we've been thinking about this for a while, but that's kind of been the catalyst as to bringing this on. So old versus new. What are the benefits of having a new system? If something's there and it's working against, why do we need another edition? Yet another edition. Um, and let's face it, there's a lot of games out there that have gone through so many variations. So, a bit of a look at that. Chris, start with yourself. Will Arkham Horror,
Uh,
the role playing game, not come out yet, so we don't know a huge amount about it, but we know the game, the board game. We played the board games, you and I.
yeah,
I love them. You love them.
yeah.
We have Call of Cthulhu. So
Um,
why is one of the
yeah.
questions.
My first thoughts were, oh, not another one. Why do we need another one? But this time around, I thought I'd shock everyone. Rather than making just a stereotypical knee-jerk reaction, I thought rather than having no information, I thought I'll wait until the essential part of what we need to find out, which is the system. The setting's done. We know the setting. It's Call of Cthulhu, um, but the system itself sounds like it's maybe bringing in fresh new ideas, a fresh look, a possibly sort of different fan base to sort of bring into the whole sort of Call of Cthulhu role playing collective. Because you have, apart from Chaosium, you have, I can't even remember how many different.
Trail of Cthulhu,
Yeah, exactly. There's so,
Fate of Cthulhu.
yeah,
Um,
so many.
it goes on.
Yeah, exactly. And dice pools, weirdly, system wise, are very popular at the moment. That may be another reason why. I'm purely speculating here, but if Free League are anything to go by, their dice pool system has proved massively popular. So that may be an indication as to why they went that way rather than percentile. Um,
I think, but if they'd gone percentile, it would have been to Call of Cthulhu. And if you think about Arkham Horror board games, etc., it tends to sort of be more of a D6 based system.
yes.
Um, so
And,
pros,
yeah,
it's going to be very much an introductory version to role playing. I think this one, and I think potentially it could work.
yeah, I mean, without hopefully without gatekeeping and without patronizing, it will introduce hopefully like a whole new generation of sort of people, regardless of age, have always skirted around it and thought, I like Cthulhu. I've never role
Yeah.
played before. Let's try what you can create your own stories. You can do this. You can go on adventures. You can face nameless horrors. You can go insane and end up in a lunatic asylum or burn a manor house down and die within its walls trying to fight ghouls. It's, you
Well,
know,
we've got
hopefully tempting.
yeah. We first of all, the great thing with Arkham Horror is that it's its own self-contained Lovecraftian universe. So you've got various characters there within it who have specific roles, whether they're librarians, professors, magicians, and they've all got their own backstories there already. Those characters are known. So I'm guessing that those characters are going to be a key component of this particular game.
I,
So you'll pick up the character, you'll know something about it. Now I'm hoping there are going to be some rules to create your own legends of the Cthulhu investigation mythos, but I think the artwork and the way this could be done will be an absolute smash. I'll just read through some of the comments that have actually been put upon, just so we'll reflect on these in a minute. Now, Stephen Turner, he's one of the guys behind Chivalry and Sorcery. This is another result of the majority of Lovecraft's work now falling into the public domain, allowing anyone to produce Cthulhu games utilizing HPL's works. We've seen a whole host of games recently, and it's going to be interesting to see the impact on Chaosium's flagship Call of Cthulhu. So that's an interesting point. Will it bite into that?
Yeah, probably, but
It,
hopefully in a good way.
well,
Chaosium have had it really good for a long time. Some would say too good, but you know, without them, creating Call of Cthulhu, a lot of us wouldn't be sat here role
no.
playing.
Well, this is it. It was a very different game when it came out. We'll look at the various editions in a second. Jeff Stokes, who does contribute a lot, puts a lot of comments up on the Facebook group. To be honest, the big question would be why. Call of Cthulhu has been around for 40 years. It's done to death on the Lovecraftian source material. There are plenty of other games out there that use Lovecraftian literature. D&D have as well, since AD&D. Isn't this flogging just a dead horse? Yes, potentially.
Yes and no.
Valid point. Valid
Yeah,
point, though.
it is a valid point. Yes, it is very much flogging a dead horse, but as what
It'd be a different take. I think this is it.
that
So,
and Lovecraftian stuff, like D&D stuff, if you take an item and you stamp an elder sign on it, like for example, if you stamp a D20 or the D&D symbol, it will sell. That's the
yeah,
point. I
it
think
will.
that because also people like new things.
Yeah,
There's a
that's
certain group.
that's it. New things, and there's also a whole new universe here to
Yes,
actually. I'm presuming it's going to be mainly Arkham based rather than spread throughout initially the world. I think that will be coming because obviously a couple of the games that they've actually brought out, they have been global spanning. Um, Remy Fiomi actually sort of refers to a most profitable dead horse that one can imagine for Edge Studios to also monetize Lovecraftian literature. It's probably going to be a reasonably profitable venture, this, and it will bring more people actually into it. Paul Goldstone, when I got Arkham Horror nearly 2 decades ago, it was like a GM-free role-playing board game, which is what we know it is as well. It was my favorite game for quite a while and well supported. The extra boards added time, and soon it was a chore to set up and take down, so it got played less. Good point again on that. That's with Arkham Horror. The game always played out quite well, and though you didn't lose every time, there was a build-up and sense of doom as things started to get away from you, as the focus was on the end game rather than character enrichment, which again it did end up being. So there you go. He goes on to actually sort of say, for new players, there's a raft of ready-to-go characters, and one presumes they'll use the same player characters from the game with easy-to-understand abilities, connections to the game world, which is it. If you know the game world, which most people do, you're in there. Um, and as he sort of says at the end, for all the haters calling it a cash cow, just jog on because this is not a new Cthulhu cash in. It's been part of Cthulhu for some time. And some of the folks, the Arkham Horror RPG has been way too long in coming. I think that is a valid point as well.
massively valid point. I mean, on the other side of that, if it is a cash cow, well, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, there's another role playing system that is a massive cash cow. They seem to be doing quite well out of it. So why can't
Another thing. Well, this will add to, I think, potentially add to it. This is for me, and from what you're saying yourself as well. This will actually add value to the Cthulhu lines rather than anything else. Andrew Peregrine, he's written quite a few things himself for quite a few companies. I think it'll do reasonably well for them and may bring board gamers who've never heard of the Call of Cthulhu into this side of the hobby. Cthulhu also sells, even with everyone doing it. They've got a system and a ton of art, resources, and they'd be fools not to make this, which is very, very true. But I'd be
So,
surprised if it becomes very popular. It'll certainly do well enough to make money for them, though. And Patrick Barrett also commented, I'm a huge HPL fan, but even I'm finding the number of Lovecraftian Cthulhu-based tabletop role-playing games available comically absurd. So there's been quite a few different opinions generated there and put up, and all of them, I think, are very valid. Now, proof is going to be in the pudding. So any final thoughts at this stage on Arkham Horror before we move on to another couple of things?
personally looking forward to it. I really enjoy the art that they'll be using for it because it's
It's atmospheric, very good.
absolutely beautiful. The artwork's
Yeah.
stunning. It's a more realistic art style rather than the cartoonish style that quite a lot favor these days. And plus, the system itself looks like it's hopefully one of these that leans towards some kind of player involvement, which is always good. Hopefully that'll be the case.
And easy to pick up potentially as well. It looks like it's going to be more of an entry level game. This could be wrong because it's still early days yet, but that's the other thing for me. As was mentioned there in the comments, bringing more people into the hobby. For me, that's a win.
Yeah.
Okay, throwing this one at you then. Call of Cthulhu. We're on 7th edition now. We started off with 1st edition, obviously, way back. What's changed really? Just throwing it's just a rhetorical question that
Yeah. Um,
what's it done to get from 1st edition through to 7th?
when you
Again, we're looking at old versus new. So the new version, 7th edition, yeah, it's a slightly different take on things. D100, it's the stats have obviously moved on a little bit, but thinking from 1st edition to 6th edition, the reality for me is there hasn't been a huge amount there to warrant the various editions and the buying of new rule books.
I'd agree with you on that one because system wise, you could go back, you could take seventh, and you could give anyone who's run previous editions go back in time, give them the rule book. They'll have no problems picking it
No.
up.
Same with
Uh,
the adventures, they'd be easily converted over. There'd be some changes, obviously, but
um,
not enough, I would think, to
the,
warrant a
I
new
think
edition.
the only change to warrant playing, like for example, seventh over say fifth, is purely cosmetic. It's basically just, I think it's just had a facelift.
Yeah. Well,
Basically,
I picked up Fungi from Yugoth, which was I think the 2nd edition, that one, the original. The I'm not going to sort of go into the details of the adventure because people might be wanting to play it. And to be quite blunt, I ran it without any conversion notes. I just sat down, picked the book up. Now, obviously, I've got quite a few years' experience behind me. You're the same. You've got quite a few years there yourself. So you got to be sort of thinking, really, does it did it need 7 editions to get to where it is today? Now, so there you go, old versus new. I think possibly the 7th edition is the best edition for Call of Cthulhu. However, I really enjoyed 1st and 2nd edition as well.
mm,
Um, I picked up the other editions in between, but I kind of found it really, I don't know, it was great, nice, sparkly new edition, but there's nothing really in there other than a bit of extra content, information pulled through, and which could have been done as a supplement, and it was just so easy to actually sort of run
Yeah,
through.
I think now I could be wrong here, but I think with Call of Cthulhu, the role playing game being based on the work of an author um, who was well known for making all of his works open license, for lack of a better word, and for
Encouraging it, yeah.
yeah, he actively encouraged the use of his IP basically, and was not bothered if you wrote stories featuring X and Y. I don't think Lovecraft would have been a fan of Call of Cthulhu and the way Chaosium um, operate, because they're not because everything they create from first edition to seventh that is not in the public domain, they have copyrighted and will pursue people and basically shut down any because they own it, which is fair enough. But I've never ever personally, this is just my personal opinion, you can discard it as you wish. I've never thought that Chaosium have published a role-playing game in the spirit that Lovecraft created his mythos.
Interesting point.
And as much as I like their games, I think the reason why there is a market for other games in a style of Cthulhu, etc., is because they're more open, they're more accepting to sort of, incorporating the sort of wider sort of creative works of everybody, and is not as restricted. Just the way I see it,
Yeah.
I love Call of Cthulhu and how it operates in its system. It's a percentile system, one of my favorites. But it's always seemed a little restrictive for my tastes, and not
Again, good
not
point.
quite Cthulhu enough.
Okay. All good points actually, all very valid. With that in mind, I'm going to turn it around for a different system, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and D&D as we know it now. AD&D worked for quite a period of time.
Yeah.
It was the genesis actually of it. You could create. I've done a video with Ezra about this actually. You could create a character within 4 or 5 minutes and get playing. Now you will probably struggle to get one done in half an hour with everything sort of there on the table. So it's moved and it's changed quite a lot. But again, has it added any value to the product? Is the game any better? Now, some will say yes, some will say no. But my personal preference is Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And I do like Fifth. I'll be quite blunt. I think it's a great vanilla framework to set games in. It's a solid and tried and tested system, but it really doesn't have the je ne sais quoi that old school AD&D have. Certainly for again, it might be because I'm an old grognard and that's the way I sort of see things. But
Yeah.
that's a take on it for me. Third edition, that was quite a change again, moving forward. And fourth edition, well, it really didn't work for what it was set out to do. It would have made a great miniatures game as a side run. Fifth edition has pulled together bits of AD&D, original D&D, third edition, bits of fourth as well. It's pulled that in.
Yeah.
But really, has that developed?
Where we are now, where for D&D, personally, I think D&D as a brand has it's been dragged off somewhere that nobody really wants it to be, and it's tied into like corporate greed basically. The people playing it are playing it essentially the same way it's always been played. Every group plays D&D differently. We'll have, none of that gatekeeping nonsense. You run D&D how you want, either mind's eye or theatre of the mind. If you want to have overland adventures, if you want to kick indoors in a dungeon and steal all the orcs' gold, you do what you bloody well want. It's your game. You play it how you like. The problem is now the way D&D is set up, and you see this on a lot of sort of chats and forums and various other things. An awful lot of people turning around and saying, how do I do this? How do I run this? Where do I get?
Have I done this right? That's it. Yeah. I think I've got it wrong.
Am I running D&D correctly? It's like, yes, you are. You bought the book, you've got the dice, you've got the players. That's correct.
The clue is in the title, Dungeon Master's Guide.
Exactly. It's a
guide. Not
set in stone. I remember running. I got into D&D second edition very late, and then third edition turned up almost immediately after I bought the books to second. Love both. I think they're both amazing. And I loved pre-written adventures, but I love making up my own stuff, and I love having a blank piece of paper, and not even the idea of a game, creating characters, and then basically going off the top of my head, or maybe saying to one player, give me the name of a dungeon you want to visit. They might turn around and go, "Oh, I want to go and explore the depths of despair, or the caverns of the ice."
Yeah.
So we make it all up.
Yes.
Which is what I think Gary Gygax's whole point was. That doesn't really exist. Both in D&D and in a lot of other role-playing games. If you give players mostly of a certain generation or experience, or sort of with an experience of certain types of role-playing game, if you fling open the doors of player choice and basically go, there's the world, do what the hell you want in it, you can go in any direction, you can make any choice, sort of to essentially do what you want, be where you want on the moral compass, and you can be the bad guys if you want, or you can be the big shiny heroes. A lot of players stumble and go, we've never had this choice before. It's a case of being essentially led by the nose, railroaded, which is some of the worst ways to run a game because you're not given choice.
Yeah.
And then in that regard, that's where D&D's lost its way. It's not, they like to talk about sort of creativity and sort of this, that, and the other. You don't get the choice, and they've regurgitated most of their settings to the point where they're so bland and have the same artwork for like Planescape Forgotten Realms.
The same style, yeah.
style artwork. It's literally it's in the
It,
rule
it's
books. It's
it's
in the
corporate. It's a corporate image that they've gone
yeah,
for.
basically. I mean,
Okay.
I'll get off my high horse and my soapbox before I fall over.
No,
But
it's what we're here for. So, your favorite version of Dungeons and Dragons, if you were told, right, okay, you're going away to a desert island, you take one version of D&D, which one would it be?
oh God,
See, for me, it'd be AD&D straight away. I know
mine would
it.
be third. Mine would be third.
Interesting take on it. Hold that thought for just a minute. That's what we're going to do. We're back with you in just a sec. Okay, and welcome back. Just had to plug my computer in there. I've been doing quite a bit of recording today, and just needed to make sure it was we're not going to miss anything. So AD&D versus D&D, we've got that. So we'll come back to these subjects again in the future. Um, we've also got on the old versus new side, Warhammer Fantasy Role Play. We've got first edition, second edition, third, and fourth. There's four different iterations, generations of it there. Now, this I think is actually sort of quite an interesting one. I suppose it follows, in some ways, the Dungeons and Dragons story because we started off with first edition, and I know you're a big fan of the earlier editions
Yeah,
actually of it. So first edition,
first.
D100 and D6 was used.
Mm-hmm.
We got to second edition, and that was D100.
So
Uh,
100, yeah, yeah. That was
and
one of the selling points for it. That when it first came out, it was all kind of like, you only need this one. It's streamlined, it's new,
yeah,
and they weren't wrong. It was incredibly well written and made a lot of sense rule wise. So I quite welcome the change from first to second. But
yeah.
anyway, on to third.
Third edition. Now, third edition, it became a very different beast. It became, I suppose, a bit like fourth edition and D&D. And if we think about it time-wise, and I've never really thought about it until recently, but this was the time that fourth edition was about, and it come out, and it was very much more of a tabletop board setting, and all of a sudden you'd got Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Third Edition, which was a huge, great big thick box that was a mix of a board game and a role-playing game, with such a mix of dice you needed special dice for it. Not a fan, I'm afraid, of that one. Artwork, can't fault it.
Oh, artwork stunning, absolutely.
Fantasy Flight games at some of the best. Some of the artwork was just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, but
Um,
yeah,
mm,
but
the
the problem,
adventures as well, they
yeah,
were good,
yeah,
but go on.
the problem with third is again thinking about it, the time. If I remember rightly, board games were doing better than role playing games.
Yeah,
So when you give a role playing game to a board game designer, you're going to get a board game.
yeah,
Simple
which
as
is what
that.
you got.
And as a board, to be fair, even as a board game, it was very sluggish, very sort of bitty. There were too many.
It,
There were
it,
too
it,
many.
it was very much a thing of its time. It was an experiment that, for my take on
So,
it, failed, unfortunately.
the
It could have
problem
paved the way for big things, but didn't.
where I mean, again, these are only my opinions. You can discard them as you wish. When designing something, if you've got too many microsystems that are different from the core mechanic, you're going to turn people off.
Yeah,
Again, third edition had its rules within rules, and then you had to have a physical item, which is the direct opposite of role playing, where the majority of it takes place in your mind. And
yeah,
if you can't, I mean, if you take role playing back to its, to its origins, sat around a table with scraps of paper and dice, oh, I've got a character sheet. Oh, it's all right. I'll write one out. I've got a book with the information in. I'll write it on the back. If you're relying on cards, you're you're not
Yeah.
you're not creating. You're hemming yourself in. It's
Yeah. So
not, not
so there
fun.
was, and then we got to fourth edition, which was back to D100. Now, some
Yeah,
variations. It's not a reprint of second. It's close in some areas, but it's interesting. They decided, like they did with D&D, to revert back.
yeah.
So
Um,
the initial development to third, and the same for D&D to fourth, and it does have both have got the fans, and fair play to them. But it's very interesting that the majority of the player base, the fan base, wanted it to change, and that's where we ended up with new editions there. So yeah, now I like fourth edition. I'll be quite blunt.
yeah,
Um, I also like second, and I like first.
yeah.
So
I prefer second,
yeah,
and if I had to an absolute push, it would be first.
yeah,
Third and fourth have their places. For example, third, to be sort of kept as a prime example of how not to create a role-playing game for any system. The amount of hate online, personally, I think is justified. But if you notice, no other company sort of made a similar game, because
no. I
it
think quite a few were
worked.
watching it to see what the reaction would
Yeah.
be.
And as a group, as a community, we quite rightly said no, no, no,
Yeah,
thank you very much. Fourth is very much a amalgamation of the three, and I don't enjoy it because it doesn't have. Well, we've said this before, haven't we? It doesn't have a focus, but that's just my opinion.
yeah.
Um,
Again, all valid, and I'm sure that people will comment and agree or disagree with us actually here. So that's Warhammer. Traveller. We'll move on to that. Now that's a classic role-playing game. And I'm disregarding Traveller New Era here and Traveller 2300. But my argument for this would be the Traveller that was created and we saw light in the 70s, um, and through to the 80s and beyond is not really any different to what we're seeing now from Mongoose.
yeah,
There's been some tweaks on character, but you roll 2d6, and really, has there been a need for any change from the little black books as
um,
they were?
again, it will be purely cosmetic. It will be, here's the brand new shiny.
Mm.
There's a slight change in this. We've updated mistakes. We've done this. We've added a couple of different options for character creation. There's some more ships. There's expanded background. That's usually a good sell.
Well, even Mega Traveler, the character creation system was there. It was again not too much. There was no real drastic changes there. Obviously, you've got the additional background of the rebellion, but uh, it's added more complications actually into the rules. But was it necessarily a good thing? I enjoyed it at the time, but thinking back, I preferred the original edition. Mongoose, they've done wonders with it, but the same thing for me, it's still so similar to the original edition that it really, and it's interesting how it's come about almost 360 degrees for me. We've had the others in the interim. We've had Mega Traveler. We've had Traveler New Era. Traveler New Era was very different, very different indeed. That used a different house system from Games Designer Workshop, but it didn't last the course. We'd got Traveller 4th edition, Mark Miller's 4th edition, which again, it was, the similarities were actually there. 5th edition that Mark Miller's done, huge, great big volumes, stacks more information. But the reality is that has it added anything? I would say not really.
It's not a game I've.
I know it's not one that you've really. I know you've got the classic edition because obviously I found you a copy of the classic edition for free for download, and it's a great little core system. But
I've always been.
does it need? Yeah.
Yeah, you see, I've always been over. Travelers always overwhelm me for some reason.
A lot of
And
people don't know what to do with it.
yeah, I mean, uh, back when I was first sort of looking at it, I wouldn't know what the hell to do with it now.
No.
Then, but now, it'd be a case of right, okay, I'll take it and I'll run something along the lines of, you pick any sci-fi film.
Yeah.
You can
Well,
do an alien game, or you can do hell, you could even do Buck Rogers. You do all
yeah.
kinds.
Well, we did. I did a Buck Rogersy type game with it back in the day. I did a Star Warsy type game, Aliens type game, Hellraiser in space before Hellraiser in space was the thing. Before they came out with that abysmal movie, I even did that with it. But what was really interesting, I got the box set, and I didn't really know what to do with it initially. I got just the basic 3 books, and I didn't get the deluxe version. Um, and it was only when I saw a adventure in Traveller in White Dwarf magazine, and I think it was issue 27, 28, something like that, that it suddenly clicked into place, and that was the catalyst that made me get into it. But the reality is that for me, it's not changed. It's didn't need all the various sort of iterations to get to where it is now. And it's interesting that it's so similar to what I think is
Yeah.
the older people may disagree with me, but that's my take on it.
Thinking about it as well. Correct me if I'm wrong here. You know more about travel than I do. Each some of the versions of Traveller have been taken on by different companies. Yes, by different people. But like for example, a few other systems that have been taken over by a different company. I think this applies to Traveller as well. I think the reason why you've had different versions is because whenever somebody acquires a particular IP, they have to put, it's almost a sort of
They have to do their own thing with it.
pride. You know, your sense of sort of ownership kicks in. It's like, well, this is mine now. I've got to put my stamp.
What have I added to it? Well, my take on it, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways you can ruin an IP that you've gained by sort of forcing your own ideals onto it, be it by a system or adding background. So
I wish they'd actually returned to the little black books that were now. Mongoose have done great things with it. They're a UK company, and I really love what they've actually sort of done. But again, revisions and additions, I don't think they're really needed. It's the same core rules. Just stick with it. What you've got there. It doesn't need updates. If you want to do an update, do it as a separate book, a little cheap book, rather than releasing another new, huge, whopping, great big hardcover that costs 40 quid or whatever.
well, again, that's the new
that's the way to do it.
What people
Gonna
buy.
throw. You were going to throw SLA Industries into the mix. So we've got some other games here. We're going to sort of return to this potentially next week, this discussion. So do you want to sort of throw your game into it now, or do you want to hold fire till next week?
I have others. SLA Industries, I will say.
Right, SLA Industries. There you go. First edition. It's 2nd edition, isn't it now? Or is it third?
No, second.
On second. I remember the first edition with the fully outy pages, the softback. Then
Yeah,
there was the hardback with the
yeah.
black cover. I thought that was separate edition, but obviously,
No, no, no. You've only got two editions.
fair enough.
Basically, the reason why you had different covers and things like that was because they basically had issues with sort of the cost of it. It was just so
Back
difficult.
in the day,
Back
it was
then.
an expensive game. The original version of SLA Industries was very expensive back in the day. But well worth it. The
Yeah,
quality of the pages was superb. Unfortunately, when you opened up that book, the pages just fell out after about a week.
I know
Uh,
it's terrible, but it was a damn good book. It was,
was
the
art is amazing. You've got the
background,
art there, yeah,
and then you've got not versions, but publishings basically of first edition. Wizards of the Coast got hold of it. Background was changed. I believe they had certain disagreements, which is why Wizards of the Coast no longer have it.
yeah,
And it basically they wanted to return to its sort of original sort of feel and things like that. Which is why you got second edition. And I don't think the guys at Nightfall liked the old system in time. You know, as game designers have changed and they've moved on. And also production values, financial backing and things like that have improved.
yeah.
And it's like the people who've designed it, it's matured as a game. It's become sort of bigger, wider, to deeper thinking and sort of more sort of diverse in its sort of ideas and setting. Which is why you've got an amazing update into second, art wise, background wise. The way they changed background as well made sense.
Yeah.
I don't know many games that have done this. They explained in real setting reasons why certain character choices weren't available.
Well,
Um,
that's it. So it merited a second edition then.
um, in some ways, yeah, it depends on your viewpoint of if you like to play those characters or not.
Yeah.
As a GM, it was like, oh God, he's got that character again. I bloody hate them. So in some ways, they did GMs a favor. They also introduced a new race, which is really cool, actually, really nice. They also made, I believe, yeah, they made carrying official, which was nice.
Yeah.
Because originally in first, that was like an add-on in one of the supplements, one of their best ideas. The system, I didn't like initially. But then again, some things I don't like change.
Yeah.
As role players, we can get quite protective. It's like, no, this is my little thing, and you've changed it. And why have you got a second edition? Because the first one was bloody perfection. Because they had essentially the contract directory edition 1.5 with like the psychological rules, and there was, I think, new combat rules. There was new stuff for the rules in that, which was really good. It sort of brought things sort of up to date and made new choices and things like that. But if for the rules for first, if you're going to pick it apart, the way the way Flux for the E1 races worked was at odds with the main rules. I never did like that. And then the way second works, it's all the same mechanic. And then eventually I came around to second. And it does
works for you.
It makes character quicker. The rules are personally they're still a little clunky, but they're a nice. It's
smooth,
like a nice dice pool system.
So it warranted basically.
Yeah.
It warranted. It needed updating, and to be quite blunt, 2 editions, not too bad. And it sounds like that there are quite enough differences in there to warrant the second edition. So
exactly the artwork as well, from going from black and white to the different artists and things like that.
Yeah,
they primarily use one art source. It's all color, and they do use different artists for certain things, but you have a sort of a uniform look with an updated setting, and it's more beautiful than it's ever been. They have narrowed the focus of playable characters. That's the one thing I don't like about it.
There'll always be something about a release that you don't like, especially if they're updating.
It's the one reason I'd go back to first and run different types of characters. But I suppose you could sort of look at the rules, look at character creation, and sort of make up your own. But no, Slay's one of those where I really didn't like it when it first turned up. Again, like I've said before, I told them at the 2019 UK Games Expo. I went up to, I can't remember his name. He was on their stand, and it was like, love this, like, but I don't like the system. I don't like this. I don't like that. And it's like, I wasn't rude about it. It was a case of, I'm just,
your opinion on it.
And then, like I said, I'm going to buy the book. I'm going to have a try. I sat down and read it, created characters, ran a small game, and I'm on board.
On board with that one. Well, there you go. So that warranted. What we're going to do, we're going to continue this on with a future episode. I think Steve's wanting to join us. We might get Jason, maybe others joining us as well to discuss. But we've got other such games like Mutant Chronicles, which again has undergone a few different editions and versions. Judge Dredd, that's another one we've seen different versions actually of, not necessarily editions, but versions of. But it's all sort of old versus new. Is that change really needed? And in some cases, it might need to be changed because a particular system has been copyrighted, I would sort of say, or used. So the new company wouldn't be able to actually necessarily use the old system. But is it any better? That's the question. So we'll revisit this again. It's been a really interesting chat today about this, and it all started obviously with the Arkham Horror RPG, which is forthcoming in the next by the end of the year, isn't it? So I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm looking forward to doing an unboxing of that. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, and I don't know whether you mentioned this at the beginning, but please comment and like and subscribe.
Get the subscriptions in there. Get us built up. I think we're almost sort of touching the first 100 now. A lot of people are watching us, but because we don't keep saying subscribe, we're not pushing people into it. But you know where it goes. Right. Okay.
More of this rubbish if you subscribe. So yeah.
Well, it's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from him, whichever
It
way.
is indeed. So from the Christopher and the Ade, we'll see you soon for the next edition. Goodbye.